Okay, so today we're going to replace the alternator and the tensioner pulley on Mel, the 1993 W250. So the parts that we have today is a refurb alternator by AC Delco. And then also by AC Delco, we have a new tensioner pulley. So as you can see here, that's the tensioner pulley you're looking at. And you can see how the belt has walked this way to the point where part of it is rubbing on the arm here for the pulley. But when you see the vehicle running, this whole pulley here, this whole thing is just vibrating back and forth constantly, and it just looks super unstable. Now the second thing we're going to do after we take the belt off is replace the alternator. As you can see, this has a significant crack in the casing for the alternator. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the belt from around the tensioner pulley and from around the alternator. You need a 3/8 ratchet or a 3/8 breaker bar, whatever fits in there really. Since I'm working with high amperage electrical, I don't think you necessarily need to do this, but I always like to disconnect the battery just in case. You can take a 1/2 inch socket, loosen it off, and pop the end off. As you can see, the two alternators are identical. So on the back right here, there's that plastic little guard. In there is a 10mm nut. So there it is. That will then allow us to undo that wire. So as you can see here, there's 7mm nuts in this position on the new alternator. Those two 7mm nuts undo this harness right here. There's two. And then as you can see here, there's another nut down here that holds the harness on. That's a 10mm. So there goes the harness. So right under here, there's another nut that holds it on. I suspect it's also a 10mm. And there's the wiring harness off the back. So the next thing we're going to do is now remove the alternator itself, now that this wiring harness is off. By doing that, we're going to remove this bolt, and there's another bolt just down here on the other side. Down here is 15mm and the front is 13. And there's the bolt. Keep that for later because they don't come with new ones. The next bolt we're going to undo is this top one here. And that's 13 on the front. So there's the bolt. Make sure you hold on to that one. And the alternator is about to fall away. Don't lose your nut. Actually, you don't actually need to put that on there, but your alternator should just come right out. There she is. So one thing to note, make sure that you keep the receipt, the box, and your old alternator, as they usually have a core charge associated with them. So if you want that money back, make sure you give this back to your parts store or whoever you purchased the alternator from. Okay, so now that the alternator is out of the way, we can just shift our belt off the tensioner pulley there slightly. Right there. And then we're gonna have to take it off using this nut here. It's a 13mm. There's the nut right there. And there's the old tensioner. Note this nub right here corresponds with a slot down in the mounting bracket. So one thing I noticed on the old one actually is you can see right here, belts over time have been wearing away at the arm that holds the pulley on. You can see it's really shiny right there. And that's not good at all. So it's been wearing away at belts, and the belts have also been wearing away at this arm. So here's the new part. Here's the bolt. Put the bolt in the hole. Line up that little nub in its hole in the bracket. And again, that bolt is a 13 millimeter. And that's nice and snug. So the next thing we're going to do is take our new alternator. The orientation, as you can see, is like this, with this small little bracket up here to the top left. So I'm not going to quite do this in reverse. I'm going to take this bolt here, line up the alternator with its mounting bracket there, just to hold it in place, while I can get this other bolt up in here. There we go. Then we take our nut, and thread it on the back of this other bolt. Take a 15 millimeter crescent wrench and your 13 millimeter ratchet. You want to make sure these guys are fairly tight. And now we can reattach the wiring harness to the alternator. One thing I'm going to do is take a wire brush and brush the leads. Just try and clean them up a little bit. I'm also going to protect them with some dielectric grease. And I'm going to reattach them. I'm going to start with the hardest one to access. Again, you don't want these wiggling loose on you, but they're obviously smaller nuts and you don't want to strip them. So now we have the alternator secured, the wiring harness back on, and the new tensioner pulley is secured and back on. So underneath your hood here is a diagram of where the belt needs to go on your truck. So this one's for the 5.9 diesel, and this is an LE truck, so it has the AC. So you're going to follow the corresponding routing for your specific truck. Down to the water pump, over to the fan. Just take your ratchet. Gotta come down here and grab the belt, move the tensioner, try and get the belt around it. So I don't know if you can see down here, but it's not routed properly on the AC pulley. So you gotta loosen it, readjust. The belt is already way more tight. So you can see down here, the belt is routed around this guy here and down over here. It's in the grooves. Looks pretty good up the side there. Looks like it's rooted in a in the correct fashion. So one final sweep of the engine bay to make sure we're not leaving any tools in here before flashing it up. Truck is running, and you can see here the battery is also charging, meaning the new alternator is also doing its job. So that there was how I replaced the tensioner pulley and the alternator on our 1993 W250. Thanks again for watching, and I hope this helps. Cheers.